Good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. Welcome to the I See Old People podcast. I am Dr. Bruce, your host. It's November 15th, Sunday, November 15th. I am in Norfolk County, beautiful Norfolk County on the north shore of Lake Erie. We are having a terrific windstorm here today. Thunder, lightning, huge gusts of wind. Warnings not to go near the lake. I'm quite far from the lake. I'm actually about 15 kilometers north of the lake, but the winds are very strong and the power is out. So I am doing today's podcast. By candlelight and flashlight. So it's nice and intimate. It's very quiet. The buzz of the electricity is gone. It's something I've become very sensitive to lately. I actually went and had my hearing checked last week, and my hearing has shown a bit of a loss. I am going to be 61 years old soon. It has shown a bit of a loss in the high end, so higher sounds like a tweeting bird or a very high-pitched voice. I've lost a little bit of that, which might explain why I'm having so much trouble hearing women when they're speaking through masks. Because this is the time of madness, and people are wearing masks everywhere now in Ontario. I actually got out of Winnipeg just in time. Winnipeg is closed right down. The gym I went to is closed. The music conservatory is closed. The zoo is closed to the public. Pretty much full lockdown in Winnipeg. And I imagine that Ontario is not going to be far behind. Ontario right now is in this stage where everyone is wearing a mask. It's really something. 2020, the time of madness. No one could have ever predicted that this would be going on still. And not only is it going on still, but we are being told that it is going to get much worse. In fact, we have been told that it is going to be a very dark winter. So right now I am concerned with the power out in my home. I know I have many hours before my freezer is affected, but I do have a freezer full of meat, frozen fruit, and those two things I was hoping to make sure I always had a good supply go into this winter of darkness that we've been told about. The supply chain keeps getting threatened. And more supplies are becoming shorter and shorter, so it's difficult right now. I wish I had a bigger freezer. I wish I had more meat in it, but I don't. And what I have is what I have. So I do have a generator, and I will resort to firing up my generator just at least to keep my freezer frozen. But I have several hours before I have to go to that kind of a drastic move. Right now, the idea when you are in a situation like this is not to open your fridge, not to open your freezer, not to open your fridge. Try to keep the cold in and keep everything as well sealed as you can. I do have a gas stove, so the stovetop will work. Gas will work in a power outage, so I can have some warm supper later on. But it is really something when the power does go out in a home like this one, and you realize just how much background noise there really is out there. Just this little constant buzz. So I started out talking a little bit about masks. Masks are just frustrating the heck out of me. Definite affront to our personal freedoms. There was a mask walk, anti-mask walk in Aylmer, Ontario, which is about an hour from here. It's near London, Ontario. They had over 1,500 people show up to that. And that was really good because the whole town, I think, the population of the town is 4,000 people. So they had people come in from Toronto and from London to bolster those numbers. So they had 1,500, which I believe is the biggest anti-mask protest that I have heard of anywhere in Canada. More so than anyone in Winnipeg or Toronto or Montreal or anywhere. I know in Europe they're very large, but in Canada we have just been doing what we've told, and everyone's just putting them on. So who are these rebels from Aylmer? I'll tell you that they're what we call the Mexican Mennonites. Now they're not really Mexican at all. They're actually German background. They are Mennonites that came from Germany because they were being persecuted by Germany at the turn of the century, and they came to Manitoba, Canada. And they spent quite a bit of time in Manitoba, and then they started getting persecuted in Manitoba. And the reason they get persecuted is because they live in colonies, and they have their own education system. They're very religious. They're the ones that you see in the horse and buggies. There's a big population of them, of the Amish down in Pennsylvania. Well, this is kind of an offshoot, a little more extreme, a little more religious. And they're called the Mexican Mennonites because they went from Germany to Manitoba. They spent a lot of time in Manitoba, Saskatchewan. They started to get persecuted there, and so they moved to Mexico. They bought a bunch of land down in Mexico. Didn't take them long before they started getting persecuted in Mexico, and then they moved back up here into Canada, and a lot of them live in southern Ontario. So a lot of them are farmers. They work on farms. They have their own farms. They grow their own foods. You can buy organic foods. They sell furniture. We buy our chickens from them, free range, no NGOs, organic chickens. They're just a great group of people. They're very, very family orientated, and they're very, very anti-medical, especially medical freedoms. They are the same group that about 30 years ago fought very, very hard for midwives to become legal in Ontario. So that is the type of health freedom that they represent, is they wanted the right to have their own women deliver their own children within their own colonies, where they were being forced to go to a hospital, a government facility, and have a medical doctor deliver their children, because that was the law. So they were instrumental in changing that law. So they viewed the fact that they could not have midwives as an affront to their medical freedom, and they fought and fought, and one of the highest users of midwives. I myself, I've used a midwife. All 4 of my children were born by midwives. My 2 grandchildren were born by midwives. I can thank the Mennonites, the Mexican Mennonites, for having that strong voice 30 years ago with midwives, and I'm going to thank them again for having that strong voice again to stand out when they were being ridiculed. They were being ridiculed by the national press. The mayor of Aylmer declared a state of emergency and had the whole town pretty much locked down with OPP and SWAT teams all over the place. So those 1,500 people were really, really brave to be out there and to voice their opinion during this time of madness. So what else has been going on? Oh yeah, I had something pretty exciting. I did something that I could have never, ever predicted in my life. I got a tattoo. I'm going to be 61 next week, and I got my first tattoo. So when I was sitting in the tattoo artist chair, he asked me what other tattoos I had when he was just basically tracing on my legs, starting to work. And I said, I don't have any other tattoos. This is my first one. And he looked right at me and he said, does your wife think you've lost your mind? And I just laughed and I said, of course I did discuss it with her. No, she doesn't think I've lost my mind, but believe me, I would never be sitting in this chair without having talked to her first. So she was actually really, really good about it. I had a debridement done. I had a MRSA infection where I was basically flesh-eating disease that was eating away at my calf. So about 2 years ago, I had to have a medical procedure called debridement, where they went in and they cut all the dead flesh out of my calf. So it ended up being about 1.5 inches in diameter, a round circular hole, and then it was about 1.5 inches deep. So you easily could have put a golf ball in there. It was so big. I was completely amazed that it healed. I thought I will always have this hole in my leg from the size of that. But, after about a week, 10 days, the bottom of it started to kind of bubble up. And then the sides started to collapse. And it just started growing from the bottom upward. And eventually it sealed off. And there's an indentation there. But certainly the fact that all of that flesh and tissue healed it makes you you're in awe. I'm in awe of how the human body could do that. And I've been in healthcare for 35 years. And to see that happen right there in my leg over the course of a few weeks, all I did was pack it with gauze so that it wouldn't collapse in, so that it had a chance to grow. The tissues had a chance to grow and to repair itself. So it was wonderful. I was absolutely thrilled to see it heal. But over time, and especially in the summer, because I love being out in the sun, I love getting my vitamin D, and I'm out in the sun a lot, and the scar has like a pink flesh to the center of the scar, and then a very, very dark circle around it of skin. So it really stood out. I didn't like it at all. I didn't like how it looked. I wasn't happy at all with it. And every time I was in shorts, I was just self-confidence. My self-confidence wasn't very good whenever I looked at it. I decided that the best thing for me to do was to try to cover it up so that I would be happier with it. So I have now a tattoo, my first tattoo on my calf. And what they did was they created a sun. Basically, the round circle from my debridement scar is a sun. And then around it is a largemouth bass, a fish, a sport fish, that is jumping up and around. So it's kind of twisting around the sun. So I'm very, very happy with it. I feel like I've done a tour of duty now that I've got this tattoo on my calf. And I mean, it's for a very first tattoo. It's no little tiny tester one, on my shoulder, the size of a quarter. I mean, this thing is big. This thing's about 4.5 inches wide by about 5 inches tall. So it's a good deep. It's got a lot of detail. I couldn't be happier. Couldn't be happier with it. So I'm really thrilled about having my very first tattoo. So it was pretty exciting times. I'm also pretty thrilled that I've hit the 5-month sober mark. I've been 5 months since my relapse. As most of my listeners are aware, I had a good run of sobriety, almost 1.5 years of sobriety before I relapsed at the beginning of the time of madness in March. And then I went on a 3-month negative, destructive kind of bender of drinking that really, really affected me. I think I did more damage in that 3 months than I did in all the years before. So I got back on the wagon though, and it's been 5 months, and I'm really, really happy about that. Actually, I had a dinner party last week, and it was the first dinner party that I'd had that my wife and I had at our house in probably 2 years, probably from when I first quit drinking almost 2 years ago in November of 2018. So we had some people over, and they were drinking. They were the people that we like to drink with. They were drinkers. We were drinkers. But anyway, I had them over, and I had some trepidation, but I got over it. I called my sponsor. I talked to my sponsor. My sponsor said, it's not about what people can give to you. It's about what you can give to people. And that really affected me. And I really thought those were wise words. So, I went in with a smile on my face, and I ended up having a really, really good time. So the next morning I look in the recycling, and there's 3 bottles of wine in there, 3 empties, 3 dead soldiers in the recycling. And it really, really made me think about my drinking days, because if I had been drinking as well, there probably would have been 6 bottles in that recycling. There would have been 6, and it wouldn't have meant that I had drank 3 more extra bottles of wine when everyone else just had 1. It would have meant that everybody would have drank more. I was a driver of drinking. I was always the one pouring the second glass. I was always the one, are you ready? Are you ready for another one? I was always the one opening the next bottle. So everybody would have drank more. So instead of a nice normal evening, and a lot of people who listen to this might think that, 3 bottles of wine for 3 people drinking, that sure seems excessive, to somebody. But to really, over the course of many hours, they were at our house from 6 p.m. until 10 p.m. It wasn't excessive. They certainly didn't leave drunk. There was no drunkenness. There was no repetitiveness. There was nothing like that. But if I had been drinking with them, there probably would have been. There would have been hangovers the next day. There would have been a cab having to be called. There would have been drunkenness going on. And it's because I was such a driver of drinking. And I look back at my whole drinking career, and that's what I was doing. I was a driver of drinking. And so now, just by stopping for myself, I have respect for myself by not drinking, and I give myself that gift of health by not drinking, but I'm also giving it to other people because they're drinking less around me. And that's really, really positive. So I'm really, really excited about these kinds of insights that I'm starting to learn about myself. And, I can't be happier being sober for as long as I have been. So the one thing I am doing though, because I am back in Norfolk County and I'm back in my own house and got a full fridge and I've got a wife who likes to cook and she makes cookies and she likes to make brownies and she enjoys baking and she enjoys cooking. So there's always all this food around and I have slowly been putting weight on. I had gotten down to such a good weight. I had lost over 30 pounds when I was in Winnipeg. And I was down to under 220, like under 220. And I mean, I usually am 250 plus. I mean, the highest I ever was 270, and I was under 220. Well, now I'm above 220 again. And I want to make sure I try to stay there. So I'm being very cautious. And the main thing I'm doing now is trying not to eat at night, because I was never eating at night before. And now I find myself nibbling around at night looking for something to eat. So that's not good, and I'm not happy about that, but I want to get that under control. I want to stay around 220. If I could get down to 210, that would be fantastic. When you look at my BMI chart, I'm supposed to weigh 185, and I haven't weighed 185 since I was in high school, so that's how long that's been. I've been doing something else that I've really, really been enjoying is I've been volunteering. I've been volunteering at the local soup kitchen. And in our town, we serve 3 mornings a week on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And they serve around 100 meals. Right now, because of the age of madness, nobody can come into the dining room area where normally everyone would sit together and enjoy community and enjoy a nice hot meal. So now everything has to be done in takeout. So because of the age of madness now, they've actually increased costs by about 50 cents per meal, which is packaging of the soup container, the container for the main entree, the container for the dessert. So it's basically usually some type of a protein, some vegetables, maybe some mashed potatoes, a piece of buttered bread, a piece of cake or a piece of pie, and then a soup of some type, always a good hearty soup. I went to volunteer. I just put my name in. I said, I'll help in the kitchen. I'll help packaging or whatever. I was really just wanted to do something, just wanted to give back, to do my step 12, give back to the community once I've learned about how to take care of myself and how to live sober, how to help other people. Anyway, the person who's in charge of it, they looked at me and they said, well, we got a pretty good crew here. There's not usually very many openings, but I'll put your name down. So I said, that's fine. I really appreciate it. I'm available all 3 of those mornings, and just let me know. As I'm driving home, I'm not even 10 minutes from there after talking to the general manager. He calls me and he says, Bruce, he says, I think you're really wasting your talents to just come and work in the kitchen or to come work as a server. He said, what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to shadow me, myself and my assistant Richard, the 2 of us, shadow us, learn our jobs. And then if something happens to us where we can't make it or one of us gets sick, you can come in and you can take over. And then in the future, if you like it, because he's 67, I'm just 61, he's got a few years on me, and he's got lots on the plate, this guy too. If in the future, maybe you want to just take it over altogether, he said, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I just want you to come in and learn the job. So I've been learning the management job as well as the assistant managing job. And I'm taking a food handler certificate course. Because always somebody there has to have the food handler certificate course. So it's really exciting. I'm learning a lot. I'm enjoying what I'm doing, and it's a real pleasure. So yeah, this has been a real good news report. We're going into week 2 of the American election now without any solid results, and I've just kind of put that all aside. Before it happened, but now that it's gone to this kind of non-decision and every day just drags into the next, I've just put it behind me. Whatever happens. Concentrate on what's going on here. Concentrate on what's happening with my wife, with my family, and try to get through this time of madness. Try to get to the other side with an intact family unit, with safely. And hopefully we're all going to get through this together. I could go on for 20 minutes just talking about this terrible situation that we're all in. But you guys all know, regular listeners know how that was absolutely driving me crazy. So I had to put it behind me for my own mental health. So I'm feeling really good. I'm volunteering. I'm aging well. I'm exercising regularly, and I got a tattoo. And I'm pretty thrilled about that. Yeah, that's it for this week. If you listen to the end, I love you, and I really, really appreciate you. So tune in again. My next episode will be on or near my birthday, which is November 23rd, and I'll have been doing the podcast for 1 year, and we'll do kind of a year in review, and we'll see what we have to say about that whole situation. So thank you. We'll see you, NT. We'll see you next time. And like I said, I really, really appreciate you. Thanks for dropping by.